I like to review a diverse range of audio products from the cheaper end all the way to the crazy expensive products. But I have a problem. I have a tendency to underestimate the cheaper products. They used to all be crap. These days though, some of them are excellent. Fozzy Audio is one brand that seems to make solid, cheap products. And yes, I'm saying cheap. There's nothing wrong with cheap. You might hold the belief that cheap equals bad. I just see cheap as being inexpensive. And cheap is what the GR40 is. This is a cheap DAC, tube preamp, and even a headphone amp for good measure. It's also way better than I ever would have expected. And by the way, Fozzy Audio sent me 2 cheap products at the same time to review. So make sure you subscribe and ring the bell if you want to see tomorrow's video about the MC331, which is a cheap DAC and speaker amp. Let's see if I reach the same conclusion about both products. For $120 US, the GR40 is a DAC built around the ESS 9028 Q2M DAC chip. That's partnered with a preamp stage using a pair of GE5654 tubes, and it's capable of processing up to DSD256 and PCM up to 384 kHz. That's nerdish for it'll handle pretty much any type of file you're likely to send it. It also has Bluetooth receiving capabilities with all the normal codecs, including aptX HD, aptX Adaptive, and aptX LL. That's more nerdish to say it's got a Bluetooth setup that's going to sound about as good as it can get, but it doesn't have one of the codecs called LDAC that some people really like. And by the way, I'm saying nerdish with no judgment. After all, I'd be the pot calling the kettle black. What none of this nerdish tells us though, is how the GR40 sounds. And the answer is, not very good if you're using IEMs, but it's pretty awesome with everything else. Sorry to interrupt, I've just got a quick note about the sponsor of this video, Tacony Audio. Tacony Audio make headphone pads for pretty much all of your favourite headphones. They can change the sound, replace the stock version, or improve the comfort of your headphone, well, all of those things. But they also have a fantastic modular cable system that can help reduce cable clutter. What you can do is buy one half that plugs into your headphone amplifier, and then that half is separate from the half that plugs into your headphones. So you can buy as many of these as you need for your headphones and only ever buy one lead to go into the headphone amplifier. Or switch that around, if you've got one pair of headphones, buy one set that goes into your headphones and as many different terminations as you need for your headphone amplifiers. It's a great way to reduce both the cost of headphone cables, but also the number of them you have lying around. And then beyond that, Tacony Audio also make things like ear tips for earphones, including wireless earphones, so they can improve the comfort of those, and even carry cases to store, protect, and transport your precious headphones. But best of all, Tacony Audio are offering 10% off to viewers of Passion for Sound. All you need to do is go to taconyaudio.com and use the code PassionForSound10 at the checkout for any and all of the different items I've just mentioned. Get 10% off all of it and use it as many times as you like. So thank you to you, and thank you to Tacony Audio. Now, let's get back to the video. Depending on the IEMs, you're going to have significant hiss using the headphone output on the GR40. And there's also significant channel imbalance from the volume control until you cross about the 9 o'clock volume mark. With full-sized headphones though, it's completely fine because you're going to need enough volume that you're going to be crossing that 9 o'clock mark anyway, and there's no hiss to be heard in headphones because the larger drivers make them less sensitive. But I'm also not really here to judge the headphone output. This is a throw-in, it's a bit of a bonus, and it's surprisingly good as kind of a bonus feature. It produces a soundstage that's not particularly wide, but it's got a good sense of resolution and a really nice, enjoyable overall timbre. That same timbre is shared with the sound that comes out of the rear outputs of the GR40, and that's really what this is all about, so let's talk about that now. As always though, let's talk about it with some context. The FiiO K11 R2R DAC costs about $40 US more than the Fozzy GR40, and it's also a proper headphone amp as well as a DAC and a preamp. It's got some extra features like a non-oversampling mode, a dedicated line-out mode so you don't have to maximize the volume if you want to run it to something else that's got a volume control. It's got some fancy lighting built in, and it's got a nice headphone stage too. What it doesn't have is tone control, Bluetooth, tubes, or the sound of the GR40. Yep, I'm as shocked as you are that I'm saying that. I expected to be telling you that the GR40 sounded okay, but I also expected to be telling you that it was lacking a little bit of resolution, perhaps that it was a little bit thick and congested sounding. After all, that's what I found with the XDuo MH02, which is quite a similar product to the GR40 that I compared with the K11 R2R and the K11 R2R one-handily. For me at least. Normally, the wrap for a cheap, tube-based DAC type device is exactly what I've just said. It's a little bit thick, a little bit congested, not particularly resolving, but a nice enough sound. Not so here. The GR40 produces a sound that's wonderfully natural, beautifully separated, and very clean. The tubes seem to balance beautifully with the characteristics of the DAC chip. The DAC chip delivers a sense of clarity and resolution, but then the tubes bring a sense of naturality and smoothness, and they mesh together perfectly. You rarely hear sound of this quality from cheap devices built around DAC chips like this one. Not that there's anything wrong with that DAC chip, but like anything, it's got its limitations. It's got its pros and cons. What Fozzy Audio seem to have done is taken the pros of the DAC chip and thrown away the cons by using the tubes as the output processing. With the GR40's volume maxed, and the K11R2R in its line out mode feeding into the Burson Soloist 3XP, the GR40 just sounded better to me across the board. The K11 was just a little bit grainier sounding. It's got a slightly drier or more clinical sound compared to the GR40. But the GR40 isn't thick or warm. It's just a bit smoother in its delivery. The K11 seems to put a little bit more emphasis into the upper mid-range. That's partly where some of that dryness comes from. And some people might like that, prefer that. But that upper mid-range emphasis is also where that sense of graininess comes from the K11R2R, and that's where I did find myself constantly being drawn back to the GR40. And I should add that of course all of this is with no bass or treble adjustments applied. And so if you're looking for a very affordable and surprisingly high-performant DAC in terms of sound quality, to feed into a pair of active speakers, maybe a separate headphone amplifier, power amplifier, or preamplifier, then the GR40 is a really interesting option. I can see people pairing this up with something like a Fozzy V3 Mono or some of the other brand cheap or affordable Class D amplifiers and getting some wonderful sound out of the setup. It would also be a fantastic setup to go with something like the Adam Audio T7V speakers that I reviewed recently. I mean, to spend any less than this on a DAC, you'd be buying a dongle, which means USB-C input only and headphone outputs only. No Bluetooth, no RCA output, no optical, no coaxial, no tubes. The GR40 is insane for the price you pay. Now I do still think that the K11R2R from FiiO is the better choice if you're looking to drive headphones regularly from that same device, as in if you're not going to buy a separate headphone amp. So the K11R2R is still an excellent choice, but more as an all-in-one. For pure DAC, the GR40 is impossible to go past. That was a shock for me. It's probably been a shock for you, hopefully a good shock though, and I'll put some links in the description down below where you can go and grab a GR40 for yourself if you want to, and it's a good choice if you do. Also, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you can come back tomorrow and see if the MC331 is just as good or better than the GR40, or maybe Fozzy used up all their magic in the GR40, we'll see. And if you're in the market for DACs, I've pinned another video here that could also be a wonderful option for you to check out. It's dynamic, it's fun, and it's very cool, so check that one out next. For now though, thank you to YouTube channel members, thank you to channel Patreon members, and thank you to those of you who leave super thanks on videos like this one. And until next time, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here again soon on Passion for Sound.